The aim of the project was to investigate the potential for developing a standardised industry banana carton. The reason for this was to reduce waste at store level. Waste in the retailers is about 5 to 8% of total sales, so that equates to about $51 to $82 million a year. And talking to the banana chain stakeholders, there was a belief that the waste could be caused by the carton itself, hence the reason for the project. It's important to stress that this project was a scoping study, so it wasn't actually doing novel research. It was actually about talking to experts within the supply chain and trying to leverage that expertise. So that enabled us to develop a very accurate picture of the current supply chain in regard to the use of cartons. There are a whole range of packing configurations available in the market, and we actually focused on the 6 per layer because that makes up 91% of the total volume that's currently supplied within the marketplace. What became apparent at the start of the project was it wasn't just about the carton, it was far more than a carton. It was actually about all the secondary packaging and the processes used in combination with the carton that actually make the difference. So you could take the perfect carton, but if you didn't use the right secondary packaging with it in terms of the gluing and the taping and the stacking, then actually you still wouldn't have a good result at the end. The next stage is to consider the key variables that influence carton performance, and the first one of those is around pallet stabilisation. And particularly relevant within pallet stabilisation is the glue and the type of glue that's used. In regard to the glue, it needs to be tacky but not too sticky, and the pallet strapping used ideally should be a stretchable tape such as a 3M tape. Most carton rub happens in the top 3 layers of the pallet, and that's just due to vibration whilst in transit. So it's really important to secure those top 3 layers as much as possible. Some growers are actually twisting those bags and tightening the bag around the bananas to prevent the vibration, and that's certainly very beneficial. Just got to be aware that it can cause the bananas to rise up and sit slightly proud, which could lead to compression damage. A lot of the research points to bags having less damage than liners, given the fact that liners don't go right around the product, so there's always a little bit of rub on the side of the cartons. The type of bag also makes a difference whether it's perforated or slitted. So slitted will ventilate quicker, so you can cool about 1 degree for every hour, versus perforated is about 1 degree for every 4 hours. In regard to slip sheets and paper, important to have a bit of paper at the bottom and then have slip sheets in between each layer of fruit. The cartons are designed to ventilate through the ends and not the sides. So the ideal way of stacking the cartons would be to have all the cartons in the same orientation, i.e. all column stacked. So in relation to stacking, the fact that the 2-piece you do need a cross-stacked layer has 2 impacts. One, there's a risk of compression damage due to the long edge being compressed with the corner of the carton above. And secondly, there's a greater chance of irregular ripening because it doesn't have the same amount of airflow going through. So the ideal would be to have 1 layer at row 6 or 7 and then across that layer at the top. In regard to pallets, one of the key differences we're seeing is that some pallets were 7 planks and some were 8 planks. And the pallets that were 7 planks had a bit of an issue in that the gaps were so big that the cartons were actually getting forced between the planks, so we were getting compression damage in the cartons. Some of the impact damage caused by forklifts meant that the end planks were being dislodged and cartons were just slipping over the edge and again getting damaged. So it's really important to make sure forklifts do have a pallet protector. When we look at carton material construction, it's hugely complex, loads of science, and there's some obvious things around, card thickness, but there's also some parameters around the content of recycled versus virgin cards. There's quite a variation in regard to carton height as well. Obviously the carton sides take the weight of the cartons above, but if the carton's too high, you can get vibration and rub marking. If the carton's too low, you can then lead to compression bruising and neck damage. So there's a trade-off between getting the optimum carton height. Some of the more expensive cartons are also using coatings as well, which is particularly useful in the wet season when there's a chance of more humidity being absorbed into the carton and therefore carton collapse. In regard to carton holding times, there's a number of growers that are holding cartons to 5 to 6 weeks or not, if not more, and ideally cartons should be used within 1 to 2 weeks, particularly during the wet season. When we look at ripening, one of the biggest factors in impacting the quality of the ripening process is the bulging sides of the carton, which disrupts airflow. And as we said, air's got to go down that end of the carton, and if the carton's bulging, then air can't flow down because the lid actually lifts up and blocks that hole. When we look at the distribution centres, in particular the DCs of the major retailers, they're all moving to automatic mechanical destacking, so it's really important that the cartons are strong enough that they can be picked up, clamped, lifted and placed down without collapsing. When bananas are picked in the DC, they tend to be the first product to be picked because of their large volume, which means they go on the bottom of the pallet and other products are stacked on top. So interstackability of cartons is quite important, which means a two-piece actually is easier for the major retailers to handle than the one-piece. When we compare the one-piece and the two-piece, there's some clear differences. So in terms of the benefits, the pros for the one-piece, there's no need for a lid, there's better ventilation which allows for more uniform ripening. In terms of pallet pickers, because the cartons are straighter and stronger, it facilitates the use of automated pallet pickers in the DCs. There's no need to use glue. It allows column stacking, which allows for more uniform air movement, which allows for more even ripening. It doesn't rely on the retailers to have to air stack in store. So the one piece probably does actually add about a half-day extra shelf life due to the increased airflow. But there are some downsides. The main one probably being around the price premium of 20 to 30 cents, which might come down as more growers move into the one piece. In terms of ventilation during winter, there may be an increased likelihood of chill damage. And picking in the DC, there is a risk that other products get cross-stacked on top of the bananas and leads to compression damage. However, it's important to stress that there's less room for error with the one piece, and you've got to adhere to the more stringent guidelines in terms of the secondary packaging that you use in association with it as well. For the two piece, the main advantages are there's no price premium, it's better able to handle external temperature variations, it's easy to stack cartons as they will slide across each other, it's easier to cross-stack the two piece with other products when they're being picked in the DC. But the main disadvantages are around, again, the labour cost for the lid to be applied and the actual cost of the lid, the fact that glue is required, the fact that carton side can sometimes be bowed, which disrupts airflow and can lead to an inconsistent ripened product. Also, in relation to stacking, the fact for the two-piece you do need a cross-stack layer, and also the need to air stack at store. Part of the project was also to consider RPCs or returnable plastic crates. So if we look at the pros and cons of RPCs, in terms of crate casing, good factor is there's no variability in construction quality. In terms of storage, they can be stored indefinitely with no deterioration. In terms of fruit quality, fruit's actually less prone to compression damage because the weight of the pallet above actually goes through the wall of the crate, so no weight is being carried onto the fruit. Other issues are the fact that if the side gets knocked in at the bottom of the pallet, you can't actually lock it out again, so it actually destabilises the whole pallet. Other issues are the fact that since all the weight of the pallet of the cartons above goes through the walls of the crate, there's nothing on the fruit, which means the fruit is prone to vibration. Also, in terms of plastic, it's not as giving, it's not as forgiving as card, so there will be a little bit more risk of physical damage caused by the crate. There's clear pros and cons to the different packaging configurations. Growers' decisions will be based on existing sunk costs and existing supply chain relationships, and ultimately what their retail customers want. It's probably not realistic to say that there is one size fits all for the whole industry, so I've come up with 3 recommendations that I've suggested as a result of this report. So firstly, minimum specification for both the one piece, the two piece, and the 13 kilo and the 15 kilo. And that's for both the actual carton as well as the secondary packaging that's used in combination with it. The second recommendation is best practice guidelines for the same 4 configurations and develop the optimum best practice and packing guidelines for each of those. And then finally, it's around a step change packing processes and packaging. So basically cherry picking the best of all the configurations, both domestically and internationally, and quantifying those benefits.